Hello and welcome back again. On my camping channel a little while ago I did a video on how to work the Kestrel. So if you're interested in a how-to video with the Kestrel weather station, then do pop over to my camping channel and have a nose there for it. In this video we're just going to have like a little fun, interesting look at a couple of differences in barometric pressure and pressure on the Kestrel and Garmin and G-Shock watches. We're not going to go into mathematical details and all complications and things like that. So if you just want some interesting, fun observations, then please carry on watching. A quick and basic note, on the Kestrel it has two pressure readings. One is the barometric pressure, which is linked to altitude, and station pressure on the unit as pressure. Let's look at pressure and barometric pressure. What you will notice is that the pressure has no calibration settings and it's showing 971, 972. The barometer is showing 971, 972, exactly the same, but with a reference of 0 meters, sea level. When we look at our G-Shock and we go into barometer, you will notice it is showing 971 pascals, which is the same as a millibar apparently. This may be a way out statement, but it is my belief that G-Shock is showing station pressure. Yes, in this instance we can vary it, but keep watching for more thoughts on this. And my old Casio is also showing 970, 971. You could, if you wanted to, calibrate your barometer by undoing the crown on the GWD G2000, pulling out the crown, and now you can calibrate it. Why would you want to? And I'll explain why not to touch this. Don't touch it. Use this one as station pressure. And I'll explain why. Because it's already factory calibrated to 0 meters. And unless you are at sea level and you know the air pressure at zero meters, leave it alone. Because if you adjust it, you'll have difficulty getting it back again. You can, of course, come out of that, go to time, go to altimeter, which is showing 190 meters. Now, we know that the elevation here is 380. It's actually about 360, but that's pretty close. So we'll calibrate this to 360. Now what's going to happen is we're going to calibrate this to 360, but the barometer will not change. And if you change the barometer on this watch, the altimeter will not change. They are independent of each other. So take this to 360. This one here we can calibrate on altitude. You could calibrate the altitude on the barometer on this, or you can do it on the altimeter. Unless you know the barometric pressure at that exact time, at that exact height, calibrate the barometer via your exact known altitude. And then when you've calibrated it to 360, we can then exit. And the altitude with the Kestrel is, of course, dependent on air pressure. That's why if air pressure goes up and down, it changes. All barometers, of course, are dependent on air pressure. But you notice there, the reference is 1014 millibars. The barometer there is now showing 1014
millibars, because if you change the
altimeter
on the Kestrel, that changes the barometer, but you notice that the pressure is the same. If you remember, we calibrated the G-Shock to 360 meters. We'll come out of that and then we'll go into the barometer again. And that is still showing 971. If you have accidentally changed your barometer and you don't know how to get it, reset it, this is how you can reset accurately this. Have another unit where the barometer and the altimeter are connected. This is what you would do. You go into your, no, you don't do it that way. Come out of that. You go into your altimeter that way. You go to your altimeter. And then, now, can you guess what we're going to do? Can you guess? Oops, I went too far. As the actress said to the bishop. Oh, it's so bloody sensitive. It's I'm pressing this button. I'm pressing all the right buttons, but not necessarily in the right order. So what we need to do is get the altimeter of an independent unit down to, and of course, because this is so sensitive, it's difficult to get it to. It's so sensitive, but you can see that you get it, even when I'm pressing down, it's still changing. It's just changing constantly because this unit is just so sensitive. But now you can see that when you are at 0 meters or thereabouts, you have a barometer reading of 972 for all intents and purposes. And that is how you would recalibrate your barometer on a G-Shock if you lose your setting. So, Philip, when you go to sea level and you're looking at the blue sky and you're setting it to 1000, that may not strictly be accurate. This is your best way of recalibrating your G-Shock barometer. And when you've reset it to 0 meters using a separate unit, then I would suggest that you leave it alone because it won't need calibrating. Just leave it. With this one, because of course I recalibrated it earlier on, that's now tossed the graph out the window. But if you want to calibrate an independent unit like this and you don't have a Kestrel, this is what you can do. Calibrate. Do you know the current elevation? Yes. Guess what we're going to do? To 0. Now, that's not exactly what we had on the other ones, but it's pretty close, 971. So the pressure of sea level on this matches sea level 975. So that will give you a ballpark figure for your resetting of something like this. But that is clearly more accurate. Interesting findings there.
Whilst the Kestrel and the G-Shock altimeter and barometer are independent of each other, or at least they can be if you use the station pressure of the Kestrel, the altimeter and the barometer on the Garmin watch are obviously connected. Therefore, I think it makes more sense if it needs adjusting, and you might find if you have it set on auto that it will automatically update, especially the altitude, using GPS positioning for accurate elevation. You may find that you don't have to adjust the Garmin at all. What I would suggest with the Garmin watch, or any watch where the air pressure is affected by the altimeter, is that you reset the altimeter if it needs resetting when you first arrive at your destination, i.e. camp, or leave it alone on the off chance that you forget and like an hour or 3 has passed. Then I would suggest that you leave it and then reset the altimeter just before you set off the next day, and that way you will have a nice steady graph showing you the air pressure over the whole time that you are at your station, rather than what I did, reset the altimeter halfway through my station camp, as it were, and of course that then puts the graph out completely and makes, you know, taking a meaningful reading quite difficult. And the trend that the graph shows is clearly going to be a lot more accurate when you are at one constant altitude for a length of time. What I'm trying to explain with this video, and maybe not as simply as I could, is that here we have 3 different pressure measuring devices: a Kestrel, which shows barometric pressure, which you can adjust; an altimeter, which you can clearly adjust; and pressure, which you cannot adjust, which is their station pressure. You have the Garmin Fenix, or any Garmin watch, or any watch probably similar to that type of instrument, where the altimeter and the barometer are directly connected. If anyone knows if there is another setting in the Garmin watch where you can kind of set it as a station pressure without affecting the altitude, please leave a comment below, because there's just something that's telling me that maybe you can, but I've not found it yet. And obviously with the Garmin, if you adjust pressure, or the barometer, I should call it for the Garmin, if you adjust the barometer, then of course the altimeter changes. And of course, if you change the altimeter, then the barometer changes. So they are linked. So they are directly linked. And then you have the Casio G-Shock watches, or indeed my old ProTrek, and I guess this is the same on new ProTrek watches, where the altimeter can of course be adjusted, but when you adjust the altimeter, it does not adjust the barometer. Therefore, I would probably leave the barometer alone, because it is most likely, from my experience here, calibrated to 0. And I think this is really useful, because when you get into camp, for example, it's already set. You know, just leave it, and then after 2 or 3 or 4 hours at least, you know when you arrived, and you can then get a rough idea as to what is happening with that graph. Whereas with the Garmin, if you adjust it after a little while, you can, you know, the graph isn't as efficient. The graph will have a bit of a bump in it, which is less easy to read, let's say. So with something like the Garmin, I probably would be calibrating it, if it needs calibrating, at the beginning or just before you set off. So you have a nice steady graph that you can have a look at. So I do apologize if this was a little bit of a long-winded, complicated video. I did this video literally a year ago, and I just haven't got around to editing it until now, and it's been a little bit tricky to edit, so it makes some sort of sense as what I was trying to achieve here. And you know, I hope that you have enjoyed it as best as you can, and please leave a comment, a like below. I've added super thanks, and I've also added membership. So if you wish to join the channel for 99p a month, you get a little star next to your name, and any little bit helps the channel, obviously. Anyway, I think that is all I really have to say here, so I will thank you very much for your time, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.